you sure?
Okay.
Are you sure it's working?
Let's hope the videos and stuff work.
Yeah.
There are a few videos.
Okay, thank you very much for coming along. I'm Philip Oliver, that's Andrew Oliver. We've been in the games industry for quite a while. So,
we prepared a PowerPoint. We like to come prepared. It's what we do. So try and go through and make sure that we cover most things that we can. But there's one thing that people mention to us, and that is, like, we do these retro talks occasionally, and people go, so what are you doing now?
yeah, you're just living in the past.
Yeah, living in the past. It's like, well, we do love our retro stuff, and we did make a lot of games, but we continue to make games, and nowadays we work at Rebellion. Here is a group photo, which is very low res.
Don't ask us to name them all.
Yeah, we're in there somewhere. And these are the games that Rebellion make, and some of our guys and our team in Rebellion Warwick make. So you may have heard of some of these games. So it's not all retro, and we just thought, because we always just talk about Dizzy and simulators and things like that, and then people ask the question, what are you doing now? So I'll show you what we're doing.
By the way, these are the bosses.
Sorry.
The Kingsley brothers. So we've been good friends with Chris and Jason Kingsley for many years, and they bought our company, so we work for them now. We got bosses. First time, it took to the age of 50 to have proper bosses and be employed.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'll quickly show you a video of the latest game that our team are working on.
Just in case you think it's all retro and that's all we know.
Right, now, if there's any kids in the audience, just look away, cover your ears, or do something, because
everything that gets shot has already died.
They're pixels, it doesn't matter, they're not real. There's some sound wanted, there's some video wanted actually.
For nearly 4,000 years, an unspeakable evil was buried, deliberately and methodically erased from ancient Egyptian history. Legend speaks of a cruel and murderous dynasty, of dark gods and unimaginable barbarity. Disturbed from her nameless tomb, Seteki, the Witch Queen, has risen again. Only one group of heroes can stand against the scourge of Seteki. The Strange Brigade. In a treacherous world of malevolent monsters and terrifying traps, four fearless adventurers fight for their lives, overcoming obstacles and puzzling predicaments, while keeping an ever-vigilant eye out for treasure troves and lost relics, unleashing explosive magic and obliterating ancient Egyptian horrors. Join the heroic Strange Brigade.
Turns out in a couple of weeks, I beat it yesterday. It works, didn't find too many bugs.
Okay, so yeah, it's just about finished and coming out Xbox, PlayStation and PC. So when people ask what we're doing now, we're still making games.
But the rest of the talk is going to be quite a history talk.
Yeah, let's go back into the retro. So where did it all start? Well, we were born in the late 60s in Liverpool.
That's what a computer looked like.
You did this slide.
Okay. That's what a computer looked like. They had cars with artificial intelligence already. And then they moved on and they shrunk the computers down in the 70s. And a friend actually had one of those. Didn't actually appeal much to us. We kind of watched TV. These two appealed to us. We loved our sci-fi. And then, of course, in the 80s, the computer games started coming out. So, Space Invaders, we saw that in the arcade. Actually, a local supermarket, believe it or not. And, of course, home computers. And that's, I guess, where we come in.
So we're going to go through these slides. Oh, actually, this was your slide. I'll do the next
Shall I
one.
do this one, Andrew?
Yeah, go on. I'll do the next one.
Okay, so a friend of ours, a different friend, actually had an Apple IIe. His father bought it. Really expensive piece of kit. I mean, if you're buying it today, like amplifying the money, it'd be £5,000 or £6,000 or something ridiculous. We loved playing Pac-Man on it, or as Apple II publisher called it, Taxman. Not at all inspired. We spent way too many hours doing that, but we thought we had to get our own computer so that we could play all night without upsetting him and his parents. So we did a paper round, we learned how to program, and we bought a Dragon 32. Our brother actually got a ZX81 under the TV, but we learned that that was rubbish. Paper keyboard, 1K of memory, dreadful. So we did the paper round, saved that, bought a Dragon 32, learned how to program it, which was really cool. Found out that nobody had type-in listings or games for the Dragon 32. It wasn't a very popular machine. So we decided we wanted to make some games ourselves and get them published in a magazine. So the first game, the first thing we had published was in 1983 in Computer and Video Games. We then went on to buy a BBC Micro and enter a competition to write a game for a national TV show, and that's in '84. Actually, that came out in '84. It was actually, we won the competition in '83, aged 15. And then after that, and being sort of first prize winners on TV in front of everybody, we were just addicted to writing games and just wanted to make the games better and better. And so got more games published, and then eventually in '86 we met up with the Darling brothers, who not only did they publish our games, they actually started paying for them. And the games got really successful. And this is what we look like age 15.
Come on. Play.
Now it's time to find out who's won our computer competition. You remember a few weeks ago we asked you to design a game and send it in either as a drawing or else as a cassette. Our computer competition winners, Philip and Andrew Oliver from Trowbridge in Wiltshire. Where are they? Let's have a look. Why don't you go? Why don't go either side? One either side. That's it. Somebody over with Chris. Come over here with me. That's it. That's splendid. Which is which?
I'm Andrew. I'm Philip.
Andrew and Philip. All right.
Why did you actually write it, and what was the basis for it?
Well, a lot of people have been trying to write arcade games in BASIC, which are far too slow, and we really thought we couldn't get one sort of a high enough quality, so we had to turn to a slow game, sort of more family game. And we came up with this idea after playing some board games.
Okay, I mean, how did you actually go about designing the game?
It wasn't that good a
and
game,
actually
let's
putting
be
it into the
honest.
computer? Do you have any problems as you put it together?
Well, I wrote it on paper and my brother typed it in.
He did say under his
tested
breath
it,
it's
found
called
hundreds of
programming.
mistakes, and after sort of a week of work, we managed to iron most of them out.
Great.
You've got to try and get each player into the middle, and you're only allowed to turn a corner.
This is the long
at the end of
version.
the dice shake, or when you hit a wall.
What are these guys' prizes anyway? And I know that everybody will be green with envy. They got a nice computer of their own at home,
They're not
so we
allowed
said,
to
why
call
don't
it
you
a
choose
BBC
another prize?
Micro, 'cause
And
we're
you
on
decided
ITV.
to go for what's called a high-resolution monitor, whatever that is. For goodness sake, I suppose you lot know. Sounds like something who collects the rubbers at the end of class.
That was
But
a
anyway,
damn good
high-resolution
monitor.
and also the possibility that top manufacturers Commodore are going to market your game and it'll actually appear on the high street.
That's
so
not
once
gonna
again,
happen on a BBC
congratulations to the
Micro.
winners of our computer competition, the Olivers.
That was a long clip, Andrew.
Okay, anyway, yes. So our early days, as Philip was saying, we were at school just playing around with computers. Bit of the ZX81, Dragon 32, BBC Micro, and we found, and Archer, if you were in Archer's talk earlier, there weren't such things as tool sets. Even finding an art package was just something, and we couldn't believe that people were trying to write games by working out stuff on graph paper and drawing
Which we
it
did
all
a couple
in.
of times.
We did.
It's hard work.
It is bloody hard work. So the first things we did is we said, we want to make some games. Oh, we can't because we haven't got any graphics. And we're not or we didn't really want to draw things on graph paper. So we made a little editor to draw graphics. And then we thought, this is quite good. So why don't we publish this? Because other people might want to do this. So that was Easy Art. And then we wanted to animate little sprites and things, because obviously if you're going to write all these games, you're going to need to animate little tiny sprites. So we wrote these in about what I call our senior...
Sixth form.
Well, no, it was before sixth form, because that was the sixth form. These are the games we wrote, sort of starting to use these. So when we were doing our own levels, it was far more interesting playing on the computers, writing
Age
stuff.
about 16.
Yeah, anyway, yeah, so you could write these all in BASIC, because they were just tools, but then you had to start to write games in assembler to get any decent speed out of it, and we'd be writing a little bit in assembler, a little bit in BASIC to just get things working, and that's effectively what these were kind of us trying to see if we could make little games and see if we could sell them. We got them into the shops. Well, I don't think we really got paid for them much, but anyway, such is life. We were only at school, so we just carried on, but we then, on leaving school, convinced our parents, well, our teacher convinced our parents to, they wanted to push us into going to university, and there was virtually nothing about computers at university at that point. At best, there was sort of IBM and Hewlett-Packard doing sort of mainframe work, and we were like, no, we want to do like computer stuff, like these 8-bit micros with graphics, not heard of. So our teacher convinced our parents to, why don't they have a year out and see if they could make some games that actually make some money. So that's effectively what we did, and we were very lucky in meeting Rich and David Darling, just setting up Codemasters. Actually, when we met them, they were called Digital Computers, but they were just renaming to Codemasters.
Right, keep going.
Okay,
a bit faster.
Right, next slide.
We've got quite a lot.
We do have a lot of slides. So people keep asking us about Dizzy. Where did Dizzy come from? Well, the first game we wrote for Codemasters was Robin Hood, or Super Robin Hood, and the idea there was to just make a platform game, because there's a lot of side-on platform games. If you're on a Commodore 64, they usually scrolled, but if you're on a
big-mapped computer,
Amstrad, as we were at that point, you couldn't scroll the screen. Although hackers have worked out how to do good scrolling screen games now, but it didn't exist back then, and on the Spectrum as well. So we did something, and the idea behind the Robin Hood was, we noticed that games had started to sell if they were based on a license. The most obvious one being Ghostbusters. It sold phenomenally well. It's like, well, there's a big movie, and there's like huge amounts of money being spent, and so people did the game, and it sold really well. And we were saying, well, we can't buy a license, don't know anyone. But the thing that sort of slightly irked us or annoyed us was all these games like Xevious and Zaxxon and Zen, like really weird sort of names which didn't mean anything, and we were like, what is this stuff? So we thought, well, let's say we're going to like fight guards in a castle, running around with bows and arrows and timing puzzles, and Robin Hood seems the obvious hero, and people knew exactly what they were getting, and that was kind of the point. It's like it
does what it says on the box.
It does what it says on the box. So so that's how Super Robin Hood came about.
And it was really successful.
Yeah, and so we moved on and said, let's do something else. We were big fans of Scooby-Doo and Ghostbusters, and it was kind of like, well,
halfway between the two.
Yeah, let's do a sort of haunted house, because we can have ghosts and vampires and stuff moving around, and it's another platform game, and it looks very different from Castles and Robin Hood. So we effectively made Ghost Hunters, not quite so successful, but it was fairly successful. And then after writing another simulator game, somewhere in there was Grand Prix Simulator. Actually, yeah, Grand Prix Simulator was done in there, and we...
Pro Ski as well.
Oh, and Pro Ski. We wanted to go and do another platform game, and thought, let's do something on fantasy. I think it was a time of that Dungeons and Dragons TV cartoon show, and we thought we could do some fantasy stuff. And we'd also just been at Disney World, and we thought, yeah, that like, let's do something that's fun and colourful, and rather than, we were really frustrated by games like Manic Miner and Jet Set Willy, because it was all about the pixel jump. Can you do the pixel jump? And it was like, oh, for God's sake, is that all gameplay has come down to, is like timing those jumps. So we wanted to base it on puzzles or something, but have navigation in there. And so that's sort of where Dizzy came from, was to have a little bit of story and not those pixel jumps. Moving quickly on. So, Dizzy went out and it wasn't particularly, it didn't sell particularly well. It probably wasn't helped by the cover illustration because it did look a bit of a weird cover picture. But back in those days, before the internet and before even the telephone helplines, Codemasters used to get a lot of mail saying, I bought your last game, it's wonderful, but I am stuck. But how do you get the coins? How do you do this? And it was actually quite laughable because we went up there and they literally, a couple of times, had a postman's sack of mail, of letters which had come in, they'd opened them and gone, oh bloody hell, it's another fan letter, and it always says, I loved your last game, or loved your game, but, and it was all Dizzy. And it was like, here, can you deal with this lot? And it was like, well, no, not really, so sorry if you wrote those letters, because well, what the hell are we supposed to do with that? So what we did is, we wrote down a full solution of the game, got it all photocopied up, and effectively anyone who wrote a letter in saying I'm stuck on so-and-so got posted back the solution sheet. But what we found when we released Treasure Island 2, like 1 year later, #1 in the charts, it just went straight into the charts, which was just brilliant. So it meant that everyone that had bought Dizzy for the last year had effectively gone straight out day one and bought Treasure Island, which was amazing. You want to say something?
Yeah, no, so moving on, I was going to actually say we've got to go a little bit quicker because there's a lot of new stuff to talk about as well. I think that everybody loved Dizzy with Treasure Island Dizzy, and it was so successful. We knew that when we produced the next one, it was going to be big. It was going to be an instant hit. So we thought, right, how are we going to make it better? It's still a spectrum you're working on. You've still got 34K usable RAM, 34,000 character bytes. That is not much to play with. We did. After producing a few more games, we ended up producing Fantasy World Dizzy. Have we got the map? Andrew, shoot backstage. I should have brought it out earlier, I forgot. And we knew this was going to be an instant #1. It introduced lots of characters, lots of dialogue, cleaned up the problem of the extra lives. And this is what game designs used to look like back in '89. That's that. It was all just hand drawn because you don't really have the ability on the computer to sort of do all these things because computers are so limited on power. So everything had to be on paper. But it was pretty cool. It did fantastically well. And then we kind of moved on to doing some other stuff. Andrew? We did some arcade games, fast food. We were massive fans of Pac-Man. Some people might say it was Taxman that got us addicted, but Taxman was Pac-Man. So that's what got us into games. So we wanted to do our own version of a classic maze game. So we did fast food as an arcade game. We did quick snacks.
We did some others actually. They'll come back to those in a minute. Is this video going to work? I think not. Oh. You can see the evolution of Dizzy over the years.
years longer than I remember. Do people remember some of those? Yeah, getting a few nods. So Andrew and I moved across onto console because we went to America and saw how big Nintendo was and things like Super Mario Brothers. And we were like looking at Super Mario Brothers going, it'll take a few weeks to write that, and yet it sold 28 million copies at a high price as well. So we thought, we can do this. So the first game we did was Fantastic Dizzy. It looked like that on the UK. And then we wrote some other Dizzy games as well.
Some other.
In fact, we actually wrote 13 NES games. Well, we were selling for America, but we were still living in the UK, obviously. We were living in Warwick, Leamington Spa, where Codemasters are. But others were making Dizzy games that we'd kind of doing the part design and then getting them to code the games and do the graphics.
Okay, so those games were written by Big Red, who ultimately, when we set up a company, we ended up taking over that company and employing all the people anyways. Okay, so, but as many of you know, Codemasters abandoned Dizzy and yeah, lots of politics, it's all in the book. Right, moving on. It's a longer story, so it's in a book. However, we wanted to carry on Dizzy, so we went to Codemasters, early PlayStation 2, and said, why don't we bring Dizzy back? We think we could do a nice Dizzy game.
Family of friends called the Yoke Folk. They had many excellent adventures. Excellent. I get it, yeah. Very clever. Anyway, evil wizard, jealous, expel, sleep forever, blah, 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 blah. 10 years passed, and the spell weakened enough for a great hero to awaken. His name? Dizzy, Prince of the Yoke Folk.
Yeah, so we just had a lot of success on PlayStation 1. We had written The Little Mermaid for Disney, Lilo and Stitch for Disney, Chicken Run for DreamWorks, Action Man 1 and 2 for Hasbro, and
Glover,
and
a few others.
I don't know if you remember those games. Anyway, we'd had quite a lot of success, and we thought, we've got quite a big team here, and we'd actually like to go back and do Dizzy. So the idea was to do a big Dizzy game, but sadly, that was part of our pitch to Codemasters, and they weren't interested.
They actually said the PlayStation 2 will never go mainstream.
Yeah, anyway. So, it didn't happen. Then, a few years later on, this was an interesting, slight revival. The ex-boss of Big Red Software, who'd written quite a few games for us, was setting up a new company to write iPhone games and Android, because they've just come out. And he had all the source code for all the old games that they'd been writing on the Amiga. So he had all the Amiga games, and so he did a demo running one of Prince of the Yoke Folk on the iPhone using all the Amiga code and the Amiga graphics. Showed it to us and said, what do you think? What do you think? Do you think I can publish this? And we said, good luck. If you want to do it, it's absolutely fine, no worries. You've got to go and talk to Codemasters. He talked to Codemasters, various things came out of it.
Eventually it got published.
But eventually it got published. Codemasters were eventually thought, well, we're not sure what to do with these smartphones, but I guess this is a dabble in the water and see how it goes. And so Codemasters got behind it, and this game did come out. So, we thought, right, okay, so there's an Android game out there, maybe we'll have another go, because now there was a dialogue with Codemasters set up about Dizzy. So we said, are we okay if we bring Dizzy back? And conversation was roughly that, yeah, okay, maybe. So we thought, well, should we do a Kickstarter and see how much interest there is for Dizzy? So obviously before you do a Kickstarter, you do a load of extra planning and you set out roughly what you're thinking. So we did some concept sketches of some of the environments that we try and do. We updated the characters, so we got one of our artists. By this time, Blitz Games was running. We had very good people who could put put time to this. So they went through saying that we're going to add an awful lot more personality to the 3D Dizzy characters and all the other characters. They're all going to really come to life, full 3D. And then we're going to bring a new, different type of art style to Dizzy to make it a bit timeless and to keep it competing from other things, and also to keep the budget down a little bit. So this was the art style we were playing with. Some of you may have seen this video. So we wanted a bit of a cartoon feel. And
still the gameplay to be on a 2D plane.
Yeah, it was going to be played on a 2D plane, but make them like stage sets. Large stage sets that you sort of wander around and the camera zooms in and out and moves around. And then there would be, I don't know, 10 or 15 of these stage sets in which you play before going on to other levels. Anyway, sadly, it didn't happen. So
it turns out we don't know how to run a Kickstarter campaign. We had to use social media and stuff like that.
Okay.
Which we didn't have a Twitter account or a Facebook account or anything, so
yeah,
it didn't happen.
Didn't happen, which is a bit sad. But anyway, however, we were doing one of these expos. Some of the people know this because I need to run on a bit faster. But in 2015, literally on stage, grabbed some props out of a box and realised it was the map, and it was the wrong map because it said Wonderland Dizzy. And then we realised that was actually never published, but we were like, well, we remember writing it, we just don't remember it being published. And so we looked in the loft and found it and did a Kickstarter for that, and that was successful, and that went out.
Well, I was going to say, Chris Wilkins did the Kickstarter for that, because at the same time, he was doing a Kickstarter for the book that we were just written.
Yeah.
So actually it became one of the goals.
Yeah. So, because we'd written quite a few games that never got published. It's what happens. So that was Wonderland Dizzy. And then looking around in the loft again, we found another one. And we literally, the thing is, just like Archer, who was on before us, we don't chuck stuff away. You just have big lofts and you just chuck it all in. But you've got piles and piles of discs. And then trying to like go through this stuff and work out what you can put back together is actually quite difficult.
It is.
But we do have a lot of this stuff. So we found another one, Mystery World, wasn't quite finished, but with the help of some friends, we managed to get it finished and debugged and published. So that was good, so that looked like that. Yeah, nice game, some of you may have that one on a Nintendo cartridge. And been up in my loft recently, found another one. It was actually on that video. So if anyone had seen that video, there was another game that we'd written that never got released. So Panic Dizzy. There was an original Panic Dizzy, which was all about conveyor belts and all this sort of stuff.
It wasn't actually that good.
But we weren't actually, we weren't taken by it. And when we were writing these Nintendo games, we were looking at various things and saying, actually, we should do a puzzle game. And so we wrote a game called Panic Dizzy. It was inspired by various match 3 puzzle picture sort of games, and it played really, really nicely. And it's just been found. So we'll be setting up a Kickstarter, or Chris Wilkins will be setting up a Kickstarter for that shortly, because we have it, and it'll be nice to be out there. When I say we have it, it was another one that wasn't quite finished, so we had to finish it. So, a new Dizzy game, because these Kickstarters are quite popular. So,
and there's only so many games we can find in the loft.
Yeah, we've run out of finding games in the loft. Maybe we haven't. No, so we thought actually the guys are bringing back the Spectrum next, because it's very difficult to load the games and play the games on the original Spectrums. So they're bringing out this Spectrum next, and people are starting to sort of look at it and say, we could write games on that. And people talk to us at places like this and said, what about you guys writing a new game? And it's like, yeah, you know, it would be fun. Can't actually remember how to code in Z80 anymore.
And actually don't want to.
It's just that realistically, with families and work, you just don't have the time that we used to have. I mean, we used to do what every programmer like Archer and stuff used to do. We used to work through the nights and all sorts on these things. It's just not going to happen now. So they're bringing back the Spectrum and loads of stats. The Spectrum came in various different flavours and one new HDMI turbo boosted flavour of Spectrum is coming out, and we thought that'd be really nice to get a new Dizzy game out on it. So, what's we got?
Put me hand up if you had a Spectrum. Hang on, I have a prop here somewhere. Oh, it's gone.
Someone's nicked your Spectrum.
I had a Spectrum here somewhere. That's gone. Oh well.
I've got your bag. It looks like a sort of big Spectrum.
Big Spectrum. So who had a Spectrum? Yeah, okay. About half of you.
Anyway,
okay,
so
some of these games.
Remember these? They're quite classics. We're not going to go around and say name them because I think they've got names on all of them anyway. But these are what people remember the Spectrum for. We wrote quite a few Spectrum games. There's our games. I can't remember.
We can add one to that list now.
Sorry?
We can add one to that list.
Why? Oh, well, Wonderland. It won't fit in the pattern. I was trying to make the slide into a pattern. Anyway, there'll be another game for the Spectrum, so because we haven't written enough. Right, okay, moving quickly on. So we're not writing it ourselves. We're designing it.
Yes, we are.
We're designing it.
We're sitting on a boat, designing it.
Okay, that was funny photo.
No real design happened that day.
No, we were too drunk. Anyway, but these guys are sort of hobbyists that have been sort of in the Spectrum scene and agreed to sort of, with us, all come together to write a new Dizzy game. So, thanks to all of them, they're still working on it. Okay, so let's see how we're doing. So, updating Dizzy's look. So, here's the original Dizzy, and here's Crystal Kingdom Dizzy. And Gerard, who may be here somewhere, he did the graphics for Crystal Kingdom and he's doing the graphics for the new Wonderland Dizzy. So we've got Dizzy looking a bit more normal now because he's got a safari hat, so he looks a little bit more interesting.
Dizzy does look much better with a hat on.
Yeah, looks like a baldy otherwise. Right, anyway, moving on. There was another artist who's been doing all of our concepts. Again, we just found him because of the wonders of the internet. It's like there's this artist who keeps on drawing all these Dizzy pictures, and
they're really, really atmospheric. They're really good.
Yeah, so we've been directing him. So he's created the new artwork for Wonderland Dizzy. So that's the new poster, and there's a lot of storyboarding that is being done for the new story. It runs in 128K. It won't run on the original 48K because of all the extra graphics. So we work with him to work out all the characters. So obviously, the Wonderful World of Oz has lots of interesting characters, and they're all played by the farming family. So spoilers if you haven't. That was spoilers if you haven't seen The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
There are a few spoilers coming up now.
Yeah, so
but
yeah, so we've designed the Dizzy folk to sort of like take the places of the characters in the Dizzy. The only one who doesn't map nicely is Dizzy himself, because it's Dorothy in the film. It's like, so he's a gender change. Anyway, but apart from that, they work very well.
2018 is fine.
So yeah, so we Philip and Pitt worked backwards and forwards, throwing back ideas for characters and how they would be represented, and introducing some of the new characters. Some you've seen before and some are new. Moving quickly on, Philip has done lots and lots of designs of maps and screens and hand drawn them all again.
That did take quite a long time, actually.
The original classic way of doing them.
I did forget what I committed myself to by saying, oh, it's easy, I could design a Dizzy game, sort of with Andrew. He'll be doing half of it, I'll be doing half of it. How much work can it be?
Yeah, so...
and the other thing that we accidentally walked into was there's about 200 or 300 fan games for Spectrum, partly because it's very successful in Russia. Dizzy was the #1 video game character in Russia. We didn't know this. So we've got to make sure that our game is actually quite good. And we've got to make sure it's better than just all the fan games. So we can't make an average Dizzy game. We've got to make a very, very good Dizzy game.
The goal is to make the best Dizzy game on the Spectrum. So there you go. So moving quickly on, these get converted into real Spectrum screens by Jared and Folk.
And Dimitri.
We put them. This is my mess. This is like what's in my head. No. So this is the map
It's quite a large game.
It is quite a large game, and this is where you pick up the object and take the object to, and you can kind of play it on paper and try and work out if it's all quite possible to do.
This time he scanned all the pictures and used Excel. But
Yeah.
in the old days, it was a large piece of cardboard. Sticking it down and putting little cutouts and bits of cotton on.
Anyway.
But we've advanced technology now.
Yeah, so, yeah, although it's a bloody mess now. It's like one of those pin boards that they use for sort of like the criminal activity. It's like that person went to there, to there, to there, and then they must have done this. Anyway, we'd like to put maps in a nice, friendly way, so this is the sort of map that the end user will see in the box or on the poster. Actually, this has been created into a poster, which is over on the other stand. So this is the new map, and it's a rough layout of
That
the
looks
same
so
map.
much more friendly, doesn't it, than the other one?
Yeah, and it does make complete sense. Anyway, moving on, a quick video of how Dizzy is looking at the moment on the Spectrum. Press go.
Is it playing?
Yeah, I think it is playing. Yeah, the video's playing. There was a pause at the beginning of the video. So they go crazy on attributes on a Spectrum, don't they? So
Shall I take over? Yeah. So everybody who knows Wizard of Oz story and more likely a film, the world starts in black and white. The Hat has just landed in the world of Oz, and we've got a classic problem to begin with. The house has been rattled to pieces by this whirlwind, and the door handle's fallen off, and you can't open the door without a door handle. So, first trick, you've got to talk to Peggy, obviously. Toto, I mean Peggy, whatever. I'm going to let you read that. This is the Mayor of Munchkin Town. You'll notice a very smooth frame rate. He's got a masked sprite, he's got his rucksack and his hat, and yet this is all 100% compatible with the original Spectrum. Meet a little munchkin. He's got the climbing from Crystal Kingdom. An inventory of 3 items, but you can select which one to put down, which is helpful. You can also will be able to see the items down here that you're holding. Oh, he's going to go down the red brick road. Don't go down the red brick road. It's to the Castle of Dread. You can go in and out of the screen. A bit like Race Against Time or Crystal Kingdom. Some crazy looking dude there. Into the dark forest. I don't think the collision was working correctly there. I don't think he wants a pair of scissors, to be fair. I think this is a bit broken at the moment. Okay, we've skipped to another part. This is into the caves, otherwise known as the Rockies. Who knows what you find in the Rockies? Eye of the Tiger.
There we go, right. Okay, so yeah, that's wonderful Dizzy. It's not finished, but it is coming soon, and it's working well, and yeah, we'll be on the Spectrum next as a giveaway.
The design is 100% complete. It's very interesting trying to debug something from that Excel spreadsheet. I'm writing all the scripts. It's got very large scripts, because we love this sort of idea of all the characters and the personalities coming out. So the script is 46,000 words. words, characters. I know this because I was worried about how they'd fit it into one bank of 16K. Turns out that they can just about by compression, and they will then, because they're all across Europe, those guys anyway, they'll convert it into about 5 languages, and Russian obviously, because that's probably the biggest market, bizarrely.
So there you go, that is what is happening with Dizzy nowadays, and we can do some questions.
Ravi, get over here mate, you're on.
Anybody with some questions, just put your hands up and I'll run them out.
There we go.
Split the speaker
so what do you test to the researchers at Dizzy? How, as you said, you had that first Kickstarter, didn't do very well.
I think it helps that we're alive.
Yeah, what
because nobody else is pushing it.
Yeah, what kind of brought it out though? Is it because the aid of Chris that kind of helped you guys build the previous Kickstarter, or was it more the fact that the internet's kind of helped rejuvenate fan interest in the character?
I think Chris with the book was a really good sort of breakthrough, because we keep saying that we've got all this stuff in the loft, and we've got all these stories of how we created what we created, and it was kind of a fun story, and it was fun to live it. And doing the Kickstarter with Chris, it was a way of kind of putting it out there and getting it recorded forever, which was really good fun to do. But actually there's a lot of nostalgia and the love for those original 8-bit games. People here in the room, at least half of you are Spectrum, which probably means the other half are Commodore 64. Don't worry, our games made it onto that as well. It means, and people sort of grew up with this stuff and love this stuff, and as a result they're looking back on it with fond memories, and we found a way of kind of capturing that and trying to give it back to people. But we are only giving it back as a hobby. I mean, whenever any money changes hands, which is rare, it's all straight to charity. So,
I mean, we've got jobs writing games, and we've been writing very big games.
Did by Strange Brigade, it's quite good.
Yeah, we've been writing games ever since, but they're generally games for other people on other brands. I mean, we did a lot of Disney and DreamWorks and Nickelodeon games over the years, but when we meet people, people are always talking about Dizzy, which was kind of ours. Unfortunately, it was sort of stolen as well. But anyway, we can do this stuff as a hobby on the side.
Any further questions for you?
I suppose the question that kind of has to be asked is, do you think there's ever going to be a hope of a sort of new next-gen Dizzy?
It takes money. I mean, games nowadays, when we did that Kickstarter video, whenever it was, years ago, we asked for $250,000 and
350,000.
350,000 was it?
And that would have just about paid with no profit.
Yeah, and we were going for the stylized look that we thought was achievable to see if there was a resurgence, but it's difficult to invest an awful lot of money when ultimately there's ambiguity on the ownership. We know that we made it.
And created it, and they didn't want it. But they do now. I guess the other thing, I mean, you guys, I mean, that Strange Brigade, I mean, these games cost millions, and that's what we're in competition with. Well, we're not, because that's a day job. So that's fine.
So it's turned into a hobby for us, which is why we're here.
Any other questions? We've got one over here.
Oh.
Who's got a question? Somebody's got a question.
He's running over there with a microphone.
Hello, it's not a Dizzy question, it's more a question about one of the games that came out under the Blitz company you're running.
Sure.
Yep. The Burger King games, how did they come about?
Oh, Burger King games, they were quite funny. So we wrote the very, very, very first Xbox game, which is called Fusion Frenzy. And unfortunately the live service was a bit delayed on the Xbox One, on the Xbox original, whatever you called it, and we'd made it as a multiplayer party game, which being the very first game and then losing the ability to play online multiplayer was a problem. But we had a really good relationship with Microsoft through that, but it didn't quite sell enough to do a sequel.
Well, it kind of did, but that's another complicated story.
Ugly story behind that one. But when they were...
It involves not getting paid, as usual.
Yeah, but we had Blitz Games was a big studio, and we could turn our hand to games pretty quickly, and they were bringing the Xbox 360 to market pretty damn quickly. They had an idea and they had to hit at Christmas, and they were looking around the developers saying, how quickly can you get a game, because we need a bunch of games for launch. And they talked to us and we said, yeah, we're up for doing some games. And then at the same time they were like doing some marketing and saying, how will we promote and push this new Xbox? And they'd ended up talking to Burger King, and Burger King said that they would do a promotion in store with games if there were some games available. So we were asked, would we do a set of fun mini games like Fusion Frenzy, but for Burger King? So brand it up.
And brand it. That was a tricky bit.
Brand it up with some Mad King thing. But it was fun because it was just like, just make some fun games, but silly games. And so yeah, we were game to do it. And so that's how it came about. So
well, there was a bit of a technical snag. I don't know if you've noticed.
And then this was this really interesting technical snag.
Technical snag was Microsoft were using it to promote the 360, but Burger King were using it to drive traffic into store. But the problem was that nobody had a 360 when they launched the campaign. So it wasn't going to drive any footfall. So unfortunately, halfway through developing them, they said you've got to make the disc backwardly compatible with a 360, which lots more customers had. That's actually quite a technical challenge.
So I think it might be the only game where in store they give you the disc, they say, have you got an Xbox? So the TV adverts were all about the Xbox 360, but
it actually works.
Most customers said, yeah, I've got an Xbox. There may have been a few that said, I've got the new one. Doesn't matter, take the disc. And the disc runs in both machines. But the interesting issue there was you could maybe make a backwardly compatible disc, but it was supposed to promote the new one. So we had to do a game that had all these fancy effects to sort of promote the new one. And so we had lots of fancy lighting and mist and things. And then told, but make sure it's backwardly compatible and runs on the old Xbox. And so there's actually two versions on the disc. And they made sure that it would run on both. So people put the disc in, it works on either. And most customers would probably never even thought about the fact that this disc just seems to work on either machine.
Really good. They came out on time. The campaign was amazingly successful. Won loads of awards. They sold 4.2 million discs.
Which is a scary thing if we want to think about the environment for a moment, because we do like to think about the environment. We worked out that if you stacked them on top of each other, the discs would be taller than the Empire State Buildings, which it's silly numbers. That's a lot of plastic in a landfill somewhere.
Eventually.
Yeah, so, yeah. But we have the internet now, and most things are digital downloads, which is a lot healthier.
Go, any more questions?
Yeah. Go on, Archie. You can ask me this one in the car on the way back, but it's for the other people.
Yeah, just listening to you guys talking about the number of times you've been ripped off or not paid.
That's showbiz.
Yeah, it's a little bit like my own career where, you know, half the time you waste a lot of time fighting a legal campaign against a publisher that's ripped you off, and then they spend hundreds of thousands of pounds with lawyers trying to defend a fraud or money laundering or whatever they're doing.
That's the games industry.
Yep, that's basically it. Now the thing is, how much more money do you think the publisher would make, as well as how many more games would the developer do, if the publishers didn't rip you off and just nurtured you to do games?
What, you mean if a publisher supported us?
Yeah. Now,
I can't believe what that would be like.
Look at Nintendo and Miyamoto. They fed and watered him for 20 odd years, and look what he's done. Now, only British publishers didn't rip you off all the time.
Yeah, I guess, well, the Western world doesn't have Miyamotos because the publishers were too busy screwing the developers. So, yeah, that's an interesting point.
It is a little bit of an issue, and obviously we ran Blitz Games and it went bankrupt. And the players that didn't pay us.
And I've spent, I would say, after stopping coding, most of my life was not designing games, which is what I love and what I want to do, but it is doing all the legals, the paperwork, the chasing invoices, the business meetings, the justifying myself, justifying the costs, and sometimes then not even getting paid when there's a contract. I love it when people say, oh, in business it's really easy, you just got to win the contract, then you'll get paid. It's like, no, that's when the fight really starts.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many developers now. We go and do lots of university talks and stuff, and people say, "Oh, a few of us are gonna make a game. We're gonna put it on the App Store, and we're gonna make loads of money." You know what? Nowadays, making the game is the easy bit, and in a way, it's the same sort of thing. It's like your royalties will come through from Apple and Google and Steam, but is it going to get noticed? It's like half the game of this industry is making the games. The other half is actually getting paid for it. It's changed. It used to be a fight with publishers. It's now just
a fight to get noticed.
A fight to get noticed, because at least things are honest now. It's honest, fairly honest and clean now. But it's still a very difficult market. And yeah, it's just a great shame. I mean, I have to say, my favourite game of all time, because I think you'd ask, is Mario Kart. Because there's a team that have just been working on Mario Kart, but just making it better and slicker and moving it onto each platform. And you're thinking, that's what could happen with some of these games. If you look back at the old games and think, if that team had just carried on evolving in the same game and not getting sort of ripped off at certain points, then some of these games would be absolutely amazing. And obviously, we all look at Mario Kart and thinking, that is just so unbelievably slick, because they haven't been messed around. I'm sure they were diverted from certain consoles, and had some issues, but games would...
But generally supported.
But generally supported much better than a lot of the indies. Such is life. Anyway, on that happy, cheery note...
We're still doing games,
yeah,
and we're making great games, and actually Rebellion is 100% straight to the market, because the Kingsley brothers also had their issues over the years, but now with Sniper Elite series, they're really, really successful, and we're really happy being employees, not having to worry about the stress of who's paying the salaries.
Get on with the games.
And just getting on with games and stuff.
Well,
creating a great environment.
Well, thank you very much. Can we get a huge round of applause for the Oliver twins?
Thank you.
And thank you for everybody that's talked today. Tomorrow we're going to have
One, two, three, four.